The Galactic Council spire hung above the blue supergiant like a blade held point down, all edges and layered rings, ancient alloy darkened by centuries of authority. Inside its central chamber, gravity was tuned slightly heavier than standard. It forced visitors to feel the weight of the council before a word was spoken. Commander Alara Voss felt it immediately. The pressure pressed into her boots, into her spine, into old scars earned on orbital stations far from ceremony. She did not adjust her stance. She did not glance upward at the tiered seats where dozens of species observed her in silence. She simply waited. High Arbiter Threxiel Core let the pause stretch. His kind believed time itself bent to hierarchy. "Commander Voss of Earth," he said at last, voice amplified through harmonic projectors, "you stand before the unified authority of the Galactic Concord." Alara inclined her head, precisely once. "I am present," she replied. A ripple of muted reactions passed through the chamber. Not disrespectful. Not deferential either. Threxiel's eyes narrowed. "You are here," he continued, "to answer for Earth's continued deviations from its provisional charter. Unauthorized orbital constructs. Energy signatures exceeding civilian thresholds. Data encryption in violation of open observation mandates. A holographic lattice ignited between them. Images of Earth's orbit rotated slowly, platforms, rings, quiet points of light that revealed nothing of purpose. These structures," Threxiel said, extending a claw, "were not approved." "They were not weapons," Alara answered calmly. "That distinction was not requested." Several council members emitted low-frequency agreement tones. The Concord was built on precedent. Permission was power. Threxiel folded his limbs behind his back. Earth was granted tolerance due to its youth. A Deathworld species elevated quickly, before it learned restraint. We expected mistakes. Alara met his gaze for the first time. "And now?" "Now," Threxiel said, "we correct them." The chamber lights dimmed as the formal record began. Every word from this point forward would be immutable, archived across the Concord's network. "Earth is ordered to dismantle all non-essential orbital infrastructure," Threxiel declared. "To submit all future development to Council oversight. Compliance will ensure continued habitation rights within Sol." "And if we refuse?" Alara asked. The Arbiter's mandibles flexed. "Then corrective action will be taken." A projection flared beside him. Simulations played out with clinical detachment, blockade vectors, kinetic strikes, atmospheric sterilization models scaled carefully to stop just short of extinction. Demonstration, not annihilation. Alara watched without visible reaction. "You are allotted 12 standard minutes," Threxiel said. "Your response will be entered into record." Silence followed. Heavy. Expectant. From the upper tiers, a delegate whispered to another, amused. Humans always struggled at this point. Pride, panic, pleading. Alara offered none. Instead, she placed her hand flat on the table before her. "Before Earth responds," she said, "I request clarification." Threxiel tilted his head. "On what point?" "Jurisdiction," Alara replied. "Under Concord Charter Article 7, Subsection 3, Enforcement Authority requires demonstrable threat classification. Please specify the threat Earth represents." A faint disturbance rippled through the chamber. Legal queries were uncommon at this stage. Threxiel answered smoothly. "Earth's actions constitute potential instability." "Potential," Alara repeated. "Not active." "Intent is irrelevant," the Arbiter said. "Capability alone suffices." Alara nodded once, as if confirming a note. "Then the Concord asserts authority based on projected capacity, not hostile action." "Yes," Threxiel said, irritation sharpening his tone. "As it always has." "Recorded," Alara said quietly. She tapped a control on her console. The gesture was small, almost dismissible. For less than a heartbeat, the holographic lattice stuttered. Several delegates noticed. Threxiel did not. You will answer the ultimatum, he said. This chamber will not entertain procedural delay. Elara lifted her gaze to the surrounding tiers, meeting alien eyes one by one. Earth has complied with every mandate issued since first contact, she said. We dismantled fleets. We limited expansion. We opened our science to inspection. And yet, Threxiel interrupted, you continued to build. We continued to learn, Elara corrected. There is a difference. The Arbiter's patience thinned. Your species confuses tolerance with immunity. No, Elara said. We confuse nothing. The countdown display activated above the chamber floor. 11 minutes, 30 seconds. Threxiel leaned forward. You will submit, he said, voice hardening. Every species does. Order demands it. Elara's expression did not change. Order, she said, is not the same as control. A low murmur rose. Threxiel struck the dais with the base of his limb. The sound cracked through the chamber. Enough, he snapped. Earth's answer. Now. Elara stood. The gravity pressed harder as she straightened, as if the spire itself resisted her movement. She ignored it. Earth declines the ultimatum, she said. The chamber erupted. Voices layered over one another in shock, disbelief, anger. Threxiel froze, then laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. You mistake this for negotiation, he said. You have chosen annihilation. Elara activated her console fully. Before you proceed, she said evenly, there is information relevant to the record. The lights flickered. Somewhere deep within the spire, a stabilizer corrected itself a fraction too late. Gravity hesitated. Just long enough for everyone to feel it. The moment passed quickly, dismissed by most as a calibration fault, but it left a residue of unease that no protocol could erase. Threxiel straightened, authority reasserting itself through posture alone, yet his eyes tracked the ceiling a fraction longer than before. Elara noticed. She always noticed. Around the chamber, delegates shifted, instincts whispering where logic remained silent. The Concord spire had never faltered in living memory. It was not meant to. Elara lowered her hand and waited again, patient as stone, while the council argued over her defiance. Earth, she knew, had already answered. The rest was simply timing. Far beyond the chamber, unseen by any present, data flowed along paths the Concord had never mapped, quiet and deliberate, like breath drawn before speech. When the Arbiter finally raised his limb to give the order, the galaxy itself seemed to lean closer, listening. Silence, once assumed obedient, waited to be redefined. Forever. The council chamber descended into controlled chaos. Orders overlapped. Translators spiked. Delegates argued in clipped bursts of sound and light while automated systems attempted to reassert procedural order. At the center of it all, High Arbiter Threxiel Core stood rigid, limbs locked, eyes fixed on Commander Elara Vos as if staring long enough might force reality to bend back into compliance. Seize Earth's channel access, he commanded. Terminate their transmission authority immediately. Technicians embedded along the chamber walls moved in unison, hands flashing across crystalline interfaces. Status glyphs flared, then stalled. Report, Threxiel snapped. A synth moderator hesitated, an error tone threading its voice. Council override not acknowledged. Threxiel turned slowly. Repeat. Council override not acknowledged, the synth repeated. Authentication loop unresolved. A murmur rippled through the tiers. Elara remained standing, hands folded behind her back, eyes forward. That is impossible, Threxiel said. No external system can reject Concord priority. Elara spoke without turning. External systems cannot, she agreed. Internal assumptions can. The Arbiter ignored her. Deploy redundancy, he ordered. Isolate Sol entirely. New commands issued. More glyphs froze mid-rotation. A junior technician rose from their station, voice tight. Arbiter. Sol is not responding as a node. It's behaving like a boundary. Threxiel's mandibles flexed. Explain. It's not blocking access, the technician said. It's declining interaction. Before Threxiel could respond, a proximity alert pulsed through the chamber. A projection bloomed, displaying a Council enforcement cruiser aligning for a precision strike on an unmanned Earth platform. The action required no further approval. Demonstration force. Clean. Efficient. Proceed, Threxiel said coldly. The cruiser fired. The kinetic lance crossed the projected distance in silence, then vanished. No flare. No impact. No debris. The projection showed empty space where the platform had been. For the first time, the chamber fell truly silent. Replay, Threxiel demanded. The sequence repeated. Same result. Absence. A systems analyst whispered, the projectile didn't deflect. It ceased. Ilera turned slightly. We prefer the term contained. Threxiel rounded on her. What have you done? Nothing, she said. You did. She raised one finger, and a new data stream unfolded across the chamber, overriding Council filters without resistance. Archived footage poured forth, classified sessions, sealed votes, erased species designations. The Concord's history, stripped of curation. Gasps echoed. Delegates stared at records they were never meant to see. You weaponized our archive, Threxiel roared. No, Ilera said. We removed your locks. A delegate from the outer tiers stood abruptly. Arbiter, this session violates. Sit, Threxiel barked. This is human interference. It is human compliance, Ilera corrected. Open observation. As mandated. Threxiel's authority fractured audibly. He turned back to the central dais, voice hard with urgency. All fleets, converge on Sol. Full mobilization. A pause. Then another. The fleet status display populated slowly, then resolved into impossibility. Human vessels occupied the projected convergence points already. They had not arrived. They had not jumped. They simply resolved into certainty, occupying probability like a settled fact. Sleek, compact, unadorned. No banners. No formation signaling dominance. A whisper passed through the chamber. They were never detected. Ilera faced the Council fully now. Because you were looking for motion, she said. We learned to build where movement was unnecessary. Threxiel stared at the display, disbelief cracking his composure. This is a declaration of war. No, Ilera replied. It is a demonstration of preparation. The Arbiter struck the dais again, harder this time. You will stand down. This Council governs 1,000 systems. And failed to notice one, Ilera said. She gestured, and the gravity within the chamber dipped, not enough to throw anyone from their seats, just enough to steal breath. Panic flared. Stabilizers screamed before recovering. Ilera lowered her hand. Gravity normalized. We are not attacking your infrastructure, she said calmly. We are proving it fragile. A senior delegate spoke, voice shaking. Commander Voss, what do you want? Ilera met their gaze. Recognition, she said. Not as a threat. Not as a subject. As a boundary you do not cross. Threxiel's voice dropped to a hiss. You believe this ends here? I believe, Ilera said, that you have already lost the ability to decide. She stepped back from the table and resumed her original position, composed, unshaken. Around the chamber, Council members realized the truth not in flashes of fear, but in slow, sinking comprehension. Their commands still issued. Their authority still proclaimed. Yet nothing moved unless Earth allowed it. Threxiel looked around, seeking confirmation, resistance, anything. He found only silence where certainty once lived. The Concord had not been overthrown. It had been bypassed. And for the first time since its founding, The galaxy watched power hesitate, then bleed away without a single shot fired. The chamber no longer felt like a throne room. Delegates sat rigid, eyes fixed on displays that no longer obeyed them. Command glyphs pulsed, accepted, then quietly nullified. The Concord spire still stood, still shone with ancient alloy, but its authority had thinned into something brittle, like a shell emptied of purpose. High Arbiter Threxiel Core stood alone at the central dais. "Restore priority channels," he ordered, voice hoarse. "Reassert command law." A pause answered him. Not refusal. Not compliance. Absence. Ilara Voss watched without satisfaction. Victory was not an emotion. It was a condition. "The Concord governed through certainty," she said, her voice carrying easily through the chamber. "Certainty depends on predictability. You assumed it belonged to you." Threxiel turned on her. "You think this ends with humiliation?" he snarled. "The galaxy will not follow a species that hides behind tricks." Ilara stepped forward, measured, unhurried. "We are not asking the galaxy to follow us." She gestured, and a new projection bloomed, not of fleets or weapons, but infrastructure maps. Trade corridors. Arbitration nodes. Communication relays. Systems every member relied on daily. These networks, she continued, were designed for efficiency, not resilience. Earth offered improvements decades ago. You declined. A delegate from the inner tier rose slowly. "Those upgrades were optional." "They were safeguards," Ilara replied. "You chose convenience." The projection shifted. Arbitration authority markers flickered, then settled, neutralized, suspended, redistributed. Not seized. Murmurs spread as delegates realized what was happening. Earth was not taking control. It was removing enforcement capacity entirely. "You're dismantling the Concord," Threxiel accused. "No," Ilara said. "We are dismantling coercion." She turned, meeting the gaze of the gathered species. "You will govern yourselves. Voluntarily. With transparency. Or not at all." A silence followed, deeper than before. "Not fear. Consideration." Threxiel's voice cut through it. "You cannot erase centuries of order." Ilara faced him fully. Order that survives only by force was already erasing itself. He laughed, bitter and sharp. "And what of Earth? You expect trust after this display?" "I expect memory," she said. "That is enough." Threxiel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Tell me," he demanded, "when did you become this powerful?" Ilara did not answer immediately. She glanced at the chamber walls, at the layers of history etched into them. "When you stopped watching us," she said finally. "When you assumed silence meant stagnation." She tapped her console once more. The remaining fleet displays dissolved, replaced by live feeds from across the Concord's territory. Council symbols were being removed, not torn down, simply uninstalled. Member worlds disengaged oversight systems with growing confidence. A delegate whispered, "They're withdrawing recognition." Threxiel sagged, just slightly. The moment passed quickly, but it was irreversible. "You planned this," he said, quieter now. "Yes," Ilara replied. "Because history taught us something." She looked at the archives still scrolling, atrocities laid bare. Power that refuses to be questioned eventually must be. Threxiel straightened, pride flaring one last time. "Then finish it," he said. "Strike us down. End the Concord completely." Ilara shook her head. "That would make us what you were afraid of." She deactivated her console. One by one, Earth's fleets faded from the projections, not retreating, simply no longer required to be visible. "The Concord will remain," she said. "As a forum. Not an authority." Threxiel stared at the empty air where dominance once lived. "And if we resist?" Ilara's answer was calm, almost gentle. "Then you will discover how small resistance feels without leverage." She turned away from him and addressed the chamber. Earth will withdraw its influence now. Not because we must, but because we can. The gravity shifted again, briefly, as if the spire itself exhaled. Systems stabilized. Control returned, not to Threxiel, but to every delegate simultaneously. No single command could dominate again. Elara walked toward the exit. No guards moved to stop her. None could. Behind her, Threxiel spoke one last time. Commander Voss. She paused but did not turn. You have changed the galaxy. Elara's reply was quiet. No. We reminded it. She left the chamber without ceremony. Across known space, the news spread, not of conquest, but of absence. The Concord still existed, but its shadow no longer reached everywhere. Worlds adjusted. Some stumbled. Others flourished. On Earth, nothing changed outwardly. Cities breathed. Oceans rolled. Humanity returned to its work, unseen, uncelebrated. And in the places where the Concord once enforced obedience, there was silence. Not imposed. Understood. The galaxy, at last, realized too late what patience had been protecting all along. The aftermath did not arrive with explosions or celebration. It arrived as a quiet recalibration, spreading across the galaxy like dawn that no one had scheduled but everyone felt. The Concord spire remained in orbit, intact and functioning, yet something fundamental had shifted. Its halls were still walked, its chambers still convened, but the weight that once pressed into the bones of every visitor was gone. Gravity settings returned to neutral. The architecture no longer demanded submission. High Arbiter Threxiel Core sat alone in the central chamber. The dais before him was unchanged, yet it felt smaller now, reduced from a symbol of dominion to a piece of furniture. He studied the console where command authority once flowed without resistance. The interface responded, but only when it should, never because it must. A door chime sounded. Enter, Threxiel said, his voice steady but diminished. A junior liaison stepped inside, careful, respectful. Arbiter, the Rel Syndicate has formally dissolved its enforcement pact. They request advisory status only. Threxiel closed his eyes briefly. Acknowledged. The liaison hesitated. The Vera Coalition followed suit. In the Kith Assembly. How many? Threxiel asked. Most, the liaison replied. The rest are, deciding. Threxiel dismissed them with a gesture. Alone again, he stared at the chamber ceiling, remembering when certainty had been effortless. Authority had once felt permanent. He now understood how fragile permanence truly was. Far from the spire, Earth did not broadcast victory. Commander Elara Voss stood on a quiet observation deck above the Pacific, watching cloud systems coil across the planet's surface. No flags waved. No crowds gathered. Humanity had returned to routine with almost unsettling speed. A voice spoke behind her. They're adapting faster than projected. Elara turned to see Director Hale, hands clasped behind his back, eyes tired but clear. They always would, she replied. Once fear stops doing the thinking for them. Hale studied the planet below. The Concord still exists. Yes, Elara said. As it should. And Threxiel? He'll remain, she answered. Symbols don't vanish overnight. They fade when no one needs them. Hale nodded slowly. Some councils are asking for guidance. Elara allowed herself a small, restrained smile. We will offer frameworks. Not commands. Are you concerned they'll see this as manipulation? If they do, she said, they'll refuse. That choice matters. Hale looked at her carefully. You carried this alone. No, Elara corrected. I carried it quietly. Across known space, changes took root. Trade lanes restructured themselves through consensus rather than decree. Arbitration became local, contextual, imperfect, and honest. Worlds once silenced began speaking, cautiously at first, then with confidence. Not all welcomed the shift. On a fortified moon at the edge of Concord territory, a former enforcement commander slammed a fist into a console. "This chaos will collapse everything," he snarled. "We should have crushed Earth when we had the chance." An aide shook their head. There was no when. The commander stared at the display showing neutralized weapon grids. He had no argument. Back at the spire, Threxiel convened a session without spectacle. No elevated seats. No weighted gravity. Delegates gathered on equal footing, uncertain but present. "We will proceed," Threxiel said, voice measured, without enforcement authority. A murmur followed, not of outrage, but relief. A delegate spoke. "And if conflict arises?" "Then we will mediate," Threxiel replied. "Not impose." He paused, then added quietly, "We will listen." The word felt unfamiliar in his mouth. On Earth, Illyra submitted her formal report. It was concise, factual, devoid of triumph. When finished, she closed the file and stood from her desk. Her assistant looked up. "That's it?" "That's enough," Illyra said. Later, alone, she replayed a fragment of the council session, the moment gravity faltered. Not as a reminder of power, but of restraint. They had stopped there on purpose. Humanity always had. A message arrived, encrypted but simple. From Threxiel Core. Subject, understanding. It contained a single line. "You taught us the cost of assuming silence meant weakness." Illyra considered before replying. From Illyra Voss. Subject, understanding. "We learned it from you." She sent it and shut down the terminal. Time passed. The galaxy did not fall apart. It grew uneven, argumentative, alive. Some systems stumbled without rigid oversight. Others thrived once freed from it. History adjusted its course, not sharply, but decisively. And whenever a species considered forcing compliance, whenever an authority leaned too heavily on certainty, memory surfaced. Not of conquest. Of a moment when gravity hesitated. Of a species that spoke softly, prepared completely, and walked away without ruling anything at all. Earth did not claim the future. It ensured no one else could claim it either. And in that space, unclaimed, unthreatened, the galaxy learned to breathe on its own.